You walked in and the first thing you saw were the tigers, painted on the walls, bright, colorful, chasing a boy through a jungle that existed only in a children's book, and on the walls of a restaurant where your mother ordered the same thing every time, and your father drank coffee that never ran out, and you sat in a vinyl booth with a menu that had 21 kinds of pancakes, and you could not believe that 21 kinds of pancakes existed in the world. That was Sambo's, and there were 1,117 of them, and now there are none. Before we dive in, hit subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you are watching from. The coffee came first, before the menu, before the pancakes. Before your mother decided between the Papa Jumbo Special and the eggs over easy. The waitress, and she was always a waitress, never a server, because this was the 1960s and the word server had not been invented yet, set a cup in front of every adult at the table and filled it without asking. The coffee was 10 cents, but 10 cents bought you a cup that never emptied. Every time you looked up from your pancakes, the waitress was there, pot in hand, filling your father's cup before he had to ask. What this country needs is a good 10-cent cup of coffee. That was their slogan. And they meant it. The coffee was not extraordinary, it was not gourmet, it was not single origin or cold brewed, or any of the words that people use now to describe a cup of coffee that costs $6. It was hot, it was bottomless, and it was the reason your father kept coming back. The pancakes were the reason your mother kept coming back. 21 varieties: buttermilk, blueberry, banana, silver dollar, tiny ones, the size of a $half, stacked in a column on the plate like poker chips. Your mother ordered the same ones every time. You know which ones. You are thinking about them right now. The way the butter melted into the top one, and the syrup ran down the sides and pooled on the plate, and you dragged the last bite through the pool and put it in your mouth, and it was the best thing you had ever tasted because you were 7 years old and sitting in a booth with your family on a Friday night, and the tigers were watching from the walls. The tigers were everywhere, painted on every wall of every Sambo's restaurant in America. Bright cartoon tigers chasing a boy through a colorful jungle. The paintings told the story from a children's book. A boy who outsmarted the tigers by making them chase each other around a tree so fast that they melted into butter. And his mother used the butter to make pancakes. Tigers and pancakes. That was the connection. That was why the walls had tigers. And when you were 6 years old, sitting in that booth, the connection made perfect sense. Tigers melt into butter. Butter makes pancakes. You are eating the tiger pancakes. The world is logical and warm, and the coffee is bottomless, and the waitress is smiling, and nothing will ever change. You were a Tiger Tamer. Every kid was. Sambo's had a kids club. The Tiger Tamers later renamed the Tiger Club, and when you joined, you got a membership card. A card with your name on it. You carried it in your pocket like a badge. You showed it to other kids. You were part of something. You were not just eating pancakes at a restaurant. You were a member of a club that had 1,117 branches and tigers on every wall, and a card with your name on it that said you belonged. The road trip was when you saw them. Every family had the same experience, driving on the highway, kids in the back seat, hours from home, everyone hungry, everyone tired, everyone asking when are we going to stop. The car was hot, the windows were down because the air conditioning did not work, or because your father said it used too much gas. Your brother was touching you on purpose, and your sister was reading a book, and your mother was looking at the map, the actual paper map, the one that never folded back the right way, and your father was watching the road and the gas gauge and the mile markers and looking for a sign he recognized. And then you saw it, the Sambo's sign. You could see it from half a mile away because it was tall and bright and designed to be seen by people who were driving 65 miles an hour and desperate for breakfast. And you said it from the back seat before your parents could. Sambo's. Can we stop at Sambo's? And your brother said it too, and your sister looked up from her book, and your mother folded the map, and your father took the exit. He took the exit because Sambo's was open 24 hours and he knew the coffee would be hot and bottomless and the waitress would smile and the kids would be quiet for 30 minutes while they ate pancakes and looked at the tigers, and he could sit in a booth and drink 3 cups of coffee and not think about the miles behind him or the miles ahead of him. Sambo's was the pause button on a road trip. It was the place where the car stopped and the family started, where nobody was asking, "Are we there yet?" Because for 20 minutes, you were there. You were at Sambo's, and Sambo's was everywhere. In 1979, there were 1,117 of them, in 47 states. On every highway, in every town that had a highway. If you were driving in America in the 1970s and you needed breakfast at 2 in the morning, or dinner at 10 at night, or pancakes at any hour on any day, there was a Sambo's within driving distance. It was the largest family dining chain in the country. More locations than Denny's. More than IHOP. More than Perkins. More than any breakfast restaurant in America. And it all started with one man, his teenage son, and his wife, in a 45-seat restaurant on the beach in Santa Barbara. Sam Battistone Sr. had run a diner in downtown Santa Barbara for 20 years. He knew every regular by name. He knew how they liked their eggs. He knew how much coffee they drank and how long they stayed and when they came back. In 1957, he opened a new restaurant on Cabrillo Boulevard, right on the beach. He stood behind the grill himself. His 17-year-old son stood next to him. His wife Ione worked as the waitress. The restaurant had 45 seats and 21 kinds of pancakes, and a name that Sam had come up with by combining his own name with the first 2 letters of his partner's last name. His partner was Newell Bohnett, a 34-year-old equipment salesman whose father had been the mayor of Santa Barbara. Sam plus Bo. Sambo's. The franchise model was unlike anything in the restaurant industry. Sam called it fraction of the action. Instead of selling franchises the traditional way, where a franchisee pays a fee and follows the rules, Sambo's offered restaurant managers the chance to buy a percentage of the restaurant they ran. The manager was not an employee. The manager was a part owner. He had skin in the game. He worked harder because the profits were partly his. He stayed longer because the restaurant was partly his. He cared more because the future was partly his. It was brilliant. It was the reason Sambo's grew from one restaurant to 1,117 in 22 years, and it was one of the reasons the whole thing fell apart. Because when a restaurant is profitable, a manager who owns a percentage is a happy man. But when a restaurant is losing money, a manager who owns a percentage is a man who just lost his savings. And when 1,117 restaurants start losing money at the same time, you have 1,117 managers who are losing their savings at the same time. And that is not a business problem, that is a human catastrophe. The name was always there. From the beginning, Sam and Bo knew what they had done when they chose it. The name was a combination of their own names. That was true. That was the origin. That is a fact. But it was also the name of a character in a children's book from 1899, The Story of Little Black Sambo, a book that had been popular for decades, but that was increasingly seen as a racial stereotype. Sam and Bo did not run from the connection. They leaned into it. They decorated the walls with scenes from the book. They named menu items after characters, Papa Jumbo, Mama Mumbo. They created the Tiger Tamers Club based on the story. Their earliest tagline was, "The finest pancakes west of the Congo." The connection between the restaurant and the book was not accidental. It was deliberate. And for years, for 2 decades, nobody complained. Or if they did, nobody listened. In the 1970s, the world caught up with the name. Cities began refusing building permits for new Sambo's locations. In some towns, the city council voted specifically to block a Sambo's from opening. Protesters appeared outside existing restaurants with signs. Lawsuits were filed in multiple states. The NOC demanded a name change. Civil rights organizations called for boycotts. Sambo's tried everything. They renamed 12 locations the Jolly Tiger. They renamed others No Place Like Sam's. But the renamings confused customers. People drove past the Jolly Tiger without stopping because they did not know it was Sambo's. And the locations that kept the Sambo's name lost customers who did not want to be seen walking into a restaurant with that sign on the building. In November 1981, Sambo's filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. 1,117 restaurants, 47 states, 21 kinds of pancakes, gone. The closings happened fast, not one at a time, not region by region, in waves, 100 here, 200 there. The locations were sold to Denny's or converted to Baker's Square or simply locked. The managers who had bought their fraction of the action, the men and women who had invested their savings into a percentage of a restaurant that they believed in, watched their investment disappear. They had been part owners of something that felt permanent. A restaurant with tigers on the walls and coffee that never ran out. And now the tigers were being painted over, and the coffee pots were being packed into boxes, and the grills were going cold for the last time. The regular customers, the ones who came every Friday, the ones whose orders the waitress knew by heart, the ones whose kids had Tiger Tamer cards in their pockets, those customers drove past one morning and the sign was different. The Sambo's sign was gone, a Denny's sign was in its place, or a Baker's Square sign, or no sign at all. Just an empty building on a highway exit that used to mean pancakes and bottomless coffee, and a booth where your family sat and the waitress smiled and the tigers watched from the walls. The man who had stood behind the grill as a 17-year-old, Sam Battistone Sr., went on to do something that nobody expected. He bought the New Orleans Jazz, an NBA basketball team. He moved the team to Utah, where it became the Utah Jazz, a name that makes no sense in Utah, but that made perfect sense in New Orleans. The teenager who had flipped pancakes next to his father on the beach in Santa Barbara became the owner of a professional basketball franchise. And then he lost that too. He sold the team to Larry Miller in 1986. The boy who lost the restaurants and lost the basketball team had started with pancakes and ended with the memory of standing next to his father at a grill in 1957, when everything was still possible. The last Sambo's was the first Sambo's, the original restaurant on Cabrillo Boulevard in Santa Barbara. It stayed open for 63 years. Sam Battistone's grandson, Chad Stevens, ran it. The same beach, the same building, the same grill where Sam Sr. had stood with his sleeves rolled up in 1957. The grandson kept the name because it was his grandfather's name and his grandfather's restaurant, and the name meant Sam plus B.O., not anything else. Not to him. In June 2020, Chad Stevens changed the name. He changed it to his own name, Chad's. The sign on the building that had said Sambo's for 63 years now said something else. The grandson of the founder took down the name that his grandfather had put up. The name that had been on 1,117 signs in 47 states. The name that families had looked for on the highway. The name that was on the Tiger Tamers card in 1 million pockets. The pancakes are gone. The bottomless coffee is gone. The tigers are painted over. The vinyl booths are ripped out. The signs are taken down. The buildings are Denny's now, or Baker's Square, or empty storefronts with weeds in the parking lot. 1,117 restaurants that serve 21 kinds of pancakes and bottomless coffee and had tigers on the walls and membership cards for kids and a waitress who never let your father's cup go empty. Every single one of them is gone. If you drive the highways now, you will pass the buildings. Some of them are still standing. The Sambo's architecture was distinctive. You can spot a former Sambo's from the road even with a different sign on it. The shape is the same, the roof line is the same, the parking lot is the same. But the tigers are gone, the menu is gone, the coffee that never ran out has run out. And the waitress who knew your father's order is somewhere else now, or retired or gone. There is a man who drove 2 hours to eat at the last Sambo's in Santa Barbara before Chad Stevens changed the name. 2 hours. To eat pancakes in a restaurant that looked the same as it did in 1957. To sit in a booth that might have been the same booth. To look at the same beach through the same window. To taste something that tasted like 1972 or 1975 or whatever year his family stopped going because the one in their town had closed. He drove 2 hours for 20 minutes of memory, and it was worth every mile. But you do not need to drive 2 hours. You do not need to find a building, or a booth, or a menu. You have it already. You have the booth. You have the Tigers. You have the silver dollar pancakes stacked like poker chips. You have the syrup pool on the plate. You have the membership card in your pocket. You have the sign on the highway and the way your father took the exit without being asked. You have Friday night, your mother across from you, your father with his coffee, the waitress with the pot, the Tigers watching from the wall. That was Sambo's. 1,117 Friday nights. All gone. But yours is still right there, in the booth, with the Tigers, and the coffee that never ran out.